everybody. Again, I feel like these videos are all looking the same. I'm going to do my best to make a video that's not when I'm driving, so I apologize. I posted up 3 videos this morning. I just recorded another one, and I got another thought that I want to get out. Again, you're going to get this raw data from me. I don't have a script. I don't have big production equipment. You're going to get me talking into my phone and posting that video directly from my phone to YouTube. I don't have like a whole production team here. So I've been doing videos of thoughts that I have, and one of the big thoughts that literally just hit me. I thought I haven't talked about what it's like to actually get the chemo. That was one big question I had before I started my chemo treatments. Like, what is it? What is it? What's it gonna feel like? What's the process like? What are the symptoms? So I really want to just kind of put that out there. If you don't know who I am, or you don't know what these videos are about, I encourage you to check out some of my earlier stuff, where I go through my diagnosis. I was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer, chemo, radiation, surgeries, and chemo again. So I had 2 rounds of chemo. The first round I had in conjunction with radiation, which I'll talk about that as well. So chemo and radiation together, and in my first chunk of treatments was the specific chemo I got was called 5FU. And I just love that name because, like, you know what FU means, right? Well, that's what it does. It gives you the big old FU. In conjunction with radiation. So radiation was every day. Unfortunately, my wife and we stayed working. I stayed working during my treatments the whole way through the year, over a year. My wife had to work as well. We have to work. So I had to drive myself to all of my radiation treatments every morning. They opened up at, I want to say 7 or 7:30. The radiology department. I told them, I want first slot. I want warm the machine up on me because I need to get to work. And that's what I did. I drove myself every day to work, to treatments. It was about a half-hour drive to Du Bois. Drove myself there. I had a big Dodge pickup truck, not this truck. It was an older one. I drove it. It got really bad on gas, so I actually traded it for a little 2-door Jeep, which was better on gas. It was a little Wrangler. It was a fun little Wrangler. And then after treatments, one of the things I wanted to do was treat myself, back into a truck. While Jeeps are cool and I love them and I've had a lot of them, I'm a truck guy. So I got as my daughter would call it, the big honking truck. So I drove myself every day in this big honking truck. Gas was bad, but I got there. Radiation took literally 2 minutes. So you get there, and if you watched one of my earlier videos, I carried a pump of chemo, and I'll explain that again here. But I carried a pump around that was connected to a port that I had in my chest. You lay down in the machine, and they, you hold your pump up high, so it's not, I was getting my colon area. The radiation was focused there, so they get you in the machine, they line you up, they tattoo you, little tiny dots. They look like moles. You don't even really know it's a tattoo. I asked if they could give me a naked chick riding a skull. They said no, but I got little dots. They line you up with a laser in the machine. You can't move. It rotates around you one way, does a whole bunch of noises, and then rotates around you the other way, and you're done. It literally takes longer for them to set you up and be aligned and everything than the actual treatment does. Did radiation hurt? No. The actual beam of radiation during the process did not hurt. The side effects sucked. I didn't have any radiation burns. I know a lot of people get radiation burns. I did not have any burns. I did lose a little bit of hair in the area that toward the end of radiation, I was losing my hair there. No big deal, grew back, who cares? But the side effects that I was having were a lot of spasms and pain in in the colon, where my tumor was. I had a big 4-inch tumor in my colon. explain that in the other video as well. But that was my radiation experience. Other than, you know, those couple side effects, radiation didn't really seem to affect me a lot. I know other, you know, people that have had a lot of bad side effects from radiation. I'm sure it's my body type and the area that I was getting treated, the amount of radiation or the intensity. I'm sure that all is a factor. So my son was a killer. I'm sorry. So that was the experience with radiation. Not too big of a deal. It was every day, Monday through Friday. Every morning I drove myself home, and by the time I got home, I was very sick. I usually took a little bit of time to just kind of relax. Maybe I took a nap, and then I would go into my office. Chemo, on the other hand, was definitely an experience. So obviously, if you're just starting this journey, you may not have gotten to this point yet. If you're already through it, you know what I'm talking about. First thing you're going to get is a port. They're going to put a port in your chest. Usually, I shouldn't say this is this is what I had, and most people that I've talked to that have had cancer treatments, they get a port. It's much better than getting an IV every day or every week or whatever your specific situation is. I had a port put in my chest. Under my skin is about the size of maybe a quarter. Definitely a lot thicker, but it was a definite bulge in my chest. The line from the port ran up into my jugular and down to the middle of my chest, and that's where they delivered the chemo. They put the chemo into that port with a little needle that went through my skin into the actual device. Then they taped it all up, and I would go home with a pump. The pump delivered chemo into my body 24/7. That was my first round of chemo. They delivered that 5FU chemo that way for my specific treatment. And I did that for the first round of chemo. It was either 6 or 8 weeks that I did radiation and chemo. I feel like it was 6 weeks. I went Monday morning, had my radiation on the first level of the Du Bois Cancer Center, went up to the second level, got my port put in, cleaned, taped. It wasn't there very long. They made sure everything was good. They did blood draws most every week, and then I left. And then I kept that chemo with me, that chemo pump with me all week long. On Friday morning, I went to have my radiation. I went upstairs. Usually sat for a little bit because the pump, they had it just so timed that right around 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, the pump was emptied. So I would wait till the pump emptied. That means I got the dose of chemo that I needed for the week, and then they took the port off, and they unhooked the port, took the chemo bag and all the pump and stuff off, and then I had the weekend off. I didn't have chemo in me. What were my symptoms of chemo? First round of chemo, specifically, tired, very tired, sick and tired. I definitely was sick and tired, nauseous. I had a lot of fatigue, a lot of nauseous and a lot of fatigue were my experience with the 5FU. It was the second round of chemo that actually hit me the hardest, and it was because I had the 5FU again, and unfortunately I had to carry that stinking pump around with me. I joked and said, when this chemo's all done, I want to buy one of these pumps off you that are junk, that don't work, and I'm just going to take it out and smash it. It's going to be my stress relief against this pump. Unfortunately, that didn't get to happen. But my second round of chemo, same scenario without the radiation. Went in every Monday morning. I had my pump put on, but before they put the pump on, I had another dose of chemo. They gave me a Benadryl pill. I know there was a steroid in there. I should back this up a little bit. First thing they gave me were fluids. And while they were waiting for my blood work to come back, because they did blood work every day to make sure my kidneys were good. If my blood work came back, okay, then they delivered the chemo. So essentially, I would go in there, they would draw the blood right from my port, They would plug me in, give me some fluids. If the blood work came back, they brought the chemo out. The chemo was, again, the 5FU, and they hung that in a bag, and they put it through the port, along with another chemo. And for the life of me, this is like the third time I've forgotten the name of that third chemo, or I'm sorry, that second chemo. And they also gave me a Benadryl pill and a steroid to, you know, help with all the side effects from the chemo. The second round of chemo hit me much harder than the first. I'm guessing that's because this second chemo that they put in me was much stronger. So let's review some side effects. I definitely had some hair loss. I didn't lose all my hair. It definitely got thinner. You know, it's a year and a half out, and it's definitely thickening up again. I'm getting it all back, but I definitely had some hair loss. I had some very strange side effects, but they told me about them ahead of time. So one of the big ones was sensitivity to cold. This sounds really strange, but let me explain. So anything you would touch that's cold, you touch a cold ice water in a glass, it felt like razors in your hand. It felt like you were just grabbing a bunch of fresh razors and they were just slicing you up. If you went outside, and unfortunately I went through this in the winter. My last treatment was in May, and I had like 8 weeks of it, so I went through it when it was cold out. So if you go outside and get a blast of cold air, it just felt like razors hitting you. It was the weirdest thing. I love, ask anybody that's been around my house, you'll see a big, huge plastic cup is full of ice water. I love ice water. I couldn't drink anything cold because it would just feel like you were swallowing razors. Another side effect that I had was the first thing that you would put in your mouth. Let's say you were sitting down for dinner and you put something in your mouth. It felt like burning sensation in your jaw and up in your jawbone. It felt like something was in there burning. Apparently that's, you know, part of this chemo that it affects your, you know, your nerves, I guess would be the way to explain it. Again, extreme fatigue, much worse on the second round of chemo with the fatigue. Tired all the time. Definitely hit me hard with the fatigue. Again, I'm getting 2 different chemos now instead of the one. And I also had a lot more nausea, a lot more sickness, a lot more of the bathroom issues, and all that kind of, you know, your stereotypical chemo symptoms that everybody talks about. So that's my kind of experience with chemo and radiation. You know, all in all, it was rough. You know, I'm not going to sugarcoat this stuff for you, everybody. I'm trying to be real with you. I want you to know what to expect. I want you to know what my symptoms were, because that might help you out, you know, with your own symptoms. Talk to your doctor if you have a lot of neuropathy. I know with my second round of chemo, that was a really big deal. I did get some pretty severe neuropathy in my feet and in my fingertips. Now, I got my fingertips back. So essentially, there's a lot of levels, and they check some stuff with your blood work, and they do a lot of asking you, hey, are you able to still tie your shoes? And if these things get really bad, they'll back off the dosage of chemo, because neuropathy can become permanent. I got my fingers back. I do not have any neuropathy in my fingers, thank God, because a lot of people that have neuropathy in their fingers, they can't write, they can't tie their shoes, you know, things are difficult. I do still, and will forever now, have neuropathy in the bottoms of my feet. Not bad. You know, a lot of diabetic patients have this really bad. Mine's super mild. It's numb from time to time. It feels like pins and needles. Not a huge deal. I was very blessed not to have that, you know, be extreme. So what I have is probably most definitely permanent at this point, but I can live with that. Those are the biggest side effects that I can really tell you to watch out for. You know, your appetite and all that stuff, kiss it goodbye. You're going to lose a ton of weight. I lost, you know, I really run about 220, 225. That's what I am right now, 223 or something like that. My wife says I was down in the 180s. I kind of remember 178, you know, just under 180. Definitely gonna lose some weight. You're sick a lot. You don't want to even think about food, let alone try to eat it. That's just the short and long of it. It is what it is. So those are the things I dealt with. I'm just pulling into my house, so sorry about going up this hill here. If you have any questions, please ask me. I really am here to help y'all. If you have any anything you want to mention about your side effects, post them up. Dying to hear them. I want to know everything I possibly can. If you have questions, let me know. I'll make a video answering your questions. Stage 4 and out the door. I'm going home, y'all.